The most common question I get asked is what's real and what's not real. There's a certain amount of skepticism the further away from the United States I go about whether this cloud thing is actually something that's real or if it's just another one of the marketing terms that the industry sometimes catches on to. So they ask that, but in the last few months they've been starting to ask more about, well, how should I think about adopting the cloud? How should I start to think about what applications are good cloud targets and think about my environment? So they seem to have moved past the definitional stage and are starting to think more about, if I were to use this, how would it happen? And then another common question is, what parts of the cloud are mature and which parts are not? Because the cloud is a label that covers a lot of technologies and methodologies and approaches and architectures, some of which we're familiar with and some of which are relatively new. So within that umbrella, my clients are trying to get a sense of what is really ready in the near term, what's not likely to become ready for some time, and what might never become ready. Yeah, so I think the key is that cloud it's a convergence and an evolution of both outsourcing and the dynamic data center. So that it has many of the same characteristics of outsourcing that we've had in the past. And it has many of the same risks and opportunities as well. So when you apply that to moving compute around, you have serious questions to ask, not just about the target environment, but about your own environment. To say, if I were to take advantage of this potentially fine-grained sourcing option, what do I need to refactor in my environment to actually be able to take advantage of that? How easy is it for me to take an application and lift it out and move it, or to take pieces of it and move it? So the cloud discussion is useful because it should be turning enterprise IT professionals inward to their own environments to say, what should be modernized here? How should I clean this up? Even if they never go to the cloud, that's a useful conversation. Right. So when I first started getting questions about the cloud, they came from two areas: the press and CFOs, not from technical people, because there was this sense of this emerging place to put commodity computing. And the cost was low, at least it appeared to be low, because if Google builds a data center that you can see from space, they've got an enormous amount of power there. And using multi-tenancy and virtualization technologies, they can keep the cost pretty low. So from a raw compute cost, it's much lower than you could ever do it. Just from a pure computing perspective, much lower than you could do it as an internal IT shop, most IT shops. But where the cost starts to add up is when you open up the covers of those providers and you realize, oh, I have to build my own security framework, or there's a risk of data loss and poor legal language around who's responsible for that data loss, and all of a sudden the costs start to add up. So I think that for some scenarios, where you really have a true commodity computing and perhaps a rehosting scenario, there's a cost savings to be had there because you're shifting the spend into an operational budget and not the capital budget. You're removing some of the overhead costs in your own environment to run that. You go to the more sophisticated cloud scenarios, and essentially, I don't think it's as much of a cost play as it simply is it's more of an agility play. And I use that word carefully because it also is an overused word. Agility, but it's really the ability to make the decision about where something will run based on capacity, based on need, and based on cost as well. So there's a number of cost equations there. But like outsourcing was 10, 15 years ago, we looked at outsourcing and said, this is a way to save money. It rarely did, right? It often came back to be more expensive. So I think the lessons that we learned in outsourcing in general can be applied to the cloud, and we have to have the same risk management approaches to that, which is to say, don't outsource anything you don't understand yourself. And outsourcing a problem in your environment doesn't necessarily fix the root cause of that problem. So it's a larger architectural discussion that has to be had to drive down, or maybe to a better way to put it, is to contain the cost of IT and get better value for your money.